Well, hey guys, it's good to be back with you today. Missed you. I know last week you had some wonderful things demonstrated as far as being baked. Those cinnamon raisin scones, biscuits were absolutely amazing. And David can come over to our house and bake them any time he wants to. So here we are. We're going to be talking about back to school. And for many of us, this is a great time to have our kids going back to school. But the question is, like, how are they going to stay healthy during this time? What are we going to be wearing? Are we going to be wearing masks? What are they going to be spraying in the classroom to keep it germ free? And I've been reading different strategies used around the world, around our country. Things have been approved, things have not been approved. For example, what are we going to use in the classrooms if we have the morning classes and then they go home and then you have the afternoon classes? What's going to be applied in the desks and everything? To, in some parts of the world, they're actually spraying the students down, front and back, and their shoes. Um, and in Thailand, I think they actually are putting them in plexiglass playpens. In other words, they're separated by plexiglass. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going on in our world right now, in our state, in your school. Many of my patients are opting for homeschooling, or otherwise known as distance learning. And many of my patients are actually going back to a physical campus to learn. Of those patients, some are part time and they'll be going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or they'll be going morning and there'll be a second shift that comes in the afternoon. Some of the kids are going to be required to wear masks. Some of the kids are not. So it'll be very interesting to hear from you um, what is going on in your particular school. Is your child going to class? And what are going to be required there? So the first thing is what we have to think about, what are they actually applying in and around the classroom? And they have these new fans that you put a special antiviral killer spray into them and they disperse it into the air, um, and then it lands on all the objects, whether it be the desks, the seats, the walls, the ceilings. A little worried about that because of the fact that what are these kids going to be breathing in? What are they going to be contacting on their skin? What they're doing here is they're basically saying that a major source of transmission of COVID-19 might be from surfaces. Now you may see when you read, they call these weird, it's a weird name, they're called fomites. Okay, a door handle is a fomite, your desktop is a fomite. Somebody's pen that they just had in their hand, now they give it to your kid, that's a fomite. And it seems that the transmission of COVID-19, it's an upper respiratory tract infection, is mostly person to person transmission, not so much fomites. Isn't that a fun name? Fomite. Um, then the masks. And what they're telling you nowadays is we keep hearing about more and more cases. Thousands of cases are being detected of COVID-19. My question is, and you're not going to see this answer, how many of those cases were wearing masks? These weren't all college kids, grouped around a bar stool, drinking drinks and laughing and singing and all that. How many of these cases were wearing the masks and only going places where other people are wearing masks and they still get it? It's almost like a phenomena that the sun comes out and I put sunglasses on. It doesn't stop the sun from coming out. The sun's going to come out anyway. The only way I could prevent that is if I put my whole body in a total shield, kind of like a hazmat suit. So we're not going to block the sun's rays, whether I want to believe it or not. And my sunglasses, even if they're wraparound, even if I have a little shield in front of me, the light's going to come in. And unless I'm wearing a hazmat suit with basically no screen in front, I'm still going to get sunlight. The same thing could be said with these viruses. They are in our community. They're already out. The cat's already out of the box. So I don't know what these masks are going to do or not do. What do we have to consider? We have to consider how are we going to make our immune systems better? Here's another problem. what happens when kids go back to school. Every pediatrician's office knows in about 7 to 10 days that phone's going to start calling because those kids are going to get sick. What's going to happen to our parents' response where a child gets an upper respiratory tract infection, a cold, a cough, a fever of 101? Oh my gosh, do you think there might be an overreaction coming our way? And once we start getting some COVID cases, are we going to start closing all the schools down again? Okay, where these kids are fine. When I look through the numbers, and you can look through the numbers too, I looked at the numbers of the military cases, 49,000 cases, 0 deaths. Okay, we know young, healthy people are generally going to do very, very well with this. They may be asymptomatic. You've been hearing about that for months. Or they may have a mild upper respiratory. So I was saying up until last week, 2 weeks ago, that I didn't even have a single one of my patients get COVID-19. I now do. And mom tells me it was just a mild upper respiratory infection. I've had parents call me up and say, my child's been exposed to somebody with COVID-19, and what should I do? I said, well, what we have been doing, what we're going to talk about today, and what I've talked about in the past, vitamin D and zinc, vitamin A, vitamin C, kind of what we've been talking about all along. And then we'll see what happens. Well, don't you want to prescribe something, hydroxychloroquine or anything? I'm going to go, let's wait and see what happens with this infection, if we even have an infection, before we worry about it. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. We're going to have our kids going back to school. They are going to get, traditionally, sick. That's what we do. Human beings, when put together, especially in school-age children, we are going to get colds. How are we going to manage the colds? When do we worry? Okay. If your child gets a cold, what are the worry points? It's going to be hard for you because you've been hearing so much. But if you asked me a year ago, called me up on the phone and said, my daughter, my son, has a 101 temperature, a runny nose, and is coughing, I'd say, well, give some Motrin. I like to use, if your child can tolerate it, Benadryl, diphenhydramine, and we'll see how this goes. Plenty of fluids. They're not going to want to eat so much, and let me know how things are going with that cough. Even children a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the coughs can get bad enough where we have to start thinking about wheezing or asthma for some of the kids, and you know who you are. Or we can get like a secondary pneumonia, what we used to call walking pneumonia. They get a secondary pneumonia. You put them on a Z-Pak or azithromycin. Do you have to panic? Again, the numbers for children around the world who are healthy, that get a severe infection is minuscule. I mean, it's really, really, really minuscule. But that's why we're kind of in this situation here, because we tend to worry about the very rare case. Because if it could, start thinking, if it could happen to them, it could happen to my son or my daughter or me. So we have to think about routine cough, cold medicines that have worked in the past for you. And when do you see a doctor? I'd say you'd see a doctor not first off, because what if we have an upper respiratory infection? Do we really care if it's COVID-19? If it's a mild thing? Not really. For some of our kids, taking that swab and going into the nose and tickling the back of the brain with it, the back of the throat with it, is a very obnoxious and for my older boys and girls, impossible task. So it's like, well, I'm not going to subject them to that just to find out, oh yes, they're COVID positive, because it's not going to change how we're going to manage that child unless they're really, really sick. Now, if they're getting really sick, we have to see them, we have to listen to them, and then we have to consider treatment therapies for them. And for the children that I would see, that are my practice, the easiest one that I can do around the country is an asthma treatment called budesonide. It's a nebulizer. Nebulizer is a little breathing machine that goes bzzz, and it blows out smoke through a little pipe that they can just be around their face, and they can just inhale that. They don't even have to smoke the pipe. But this is what, if you're not used to it, this is what asthmatics do with albuterol or something called Zopanex. It's just a breathing treatment. It's a breathing treatment. Well, I would use budesonide, which is a breathing treatment for asthmatics. And as far as what's going on politically, nobody said you can't do that. I might put them on azithromycin, a Z-Pack, and many of you know what that is. It's just an antibiotic. Okay. But of course, they're on vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, and zinc. They're on that. For my kids who have some kind of immunocompromised, I'll put them on a form of shiitake mushroom that we have here called Empower. It's a play on words, immune system, power, okay. So Empower, we're going to put them on Empower to get their natural killer cells really boosted. But those are good for my kids who are truly immunocompromised. And I do have quite a few because many of them do also have the autism diagnosis. So again, that's one thing we would do. People are asking me all the time, no matter where I go, what do you think about hydroxychloroquine? And we've been using hydroxychloroquine for a long time, and more studies are coming out saying that it actually is beneficial. The Henry Ford Medical Center and the participating medical center said there is statistical value for it. A personal friend of mine who is a pathologist at a major hospital, that hospital has decided to put their patients on hydroxychloroquine. If they're sick enough to come into the hospital to be seen, then they're sick enough to get hydroxychloroquine. They go home with it. They haven't lost a single patient. So those are anecdotal, and doctors have this real problem right now with anecdotal evidence. They want to see the studies that are going to cost $1 million or more, and 2 or 3 years from now we'll have results from those studies. And you and I don't want to wait 2 or 3 years for something like that. So hydroxychloroquine is a consideration, but in certain states it is verboten. It is forbidden to be prescribed off-label, and even if your doctor will write it, the pharmacist will not fill it. So if you live in one of those states, it's not an option, so you'd probably have to go and ask for at least a breathing treatment medicine called budesonide. So that would be something that I would consider too. But again, that is not what you're going to be seeing. And I could say this with pretty good clarity for 90+% of you all, you're going to just be having upper respiratory tract infections. Very rarely does it become a lower respiratory tract infection. That means lungs. And then they would probably need an antibiotic, okay, because you can get a second, what we call secondary bacterial infection from that. So I think that would be the very smart way to approach this and not to be worried about it. So what am I more worried about? Like I started out the program, I'm more worried about what we're spraying in their room every day and twice a day and aerosolizing all over the place. That is what I'm a little bit more concerned about, that our young kids, our kindergarten kids. And, you know, for many schools, they don't even turn on the HVAC systems until it starts getting cold. And then they kick up the heater and it kicks up all the dust and debris. And I have more kids who have problems with that when they kick up those heaters for the first time. And they get wheezing and coughing and sneezing and dark circles under the eyes and all. All right, let's see if we got some questions here. Hi, Nicole. Hey, Annette. Pina's in, and she loves the shirt. Thank you. This shirt was a gift to me from a couple of my patient families, and I'm very, very thankful. And you can't see it, but it does say New York Yankees. Well, it says New York here. This is a New York Yankee shirt. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. If you don't like New York, you don't have to read the New York Yankee. If you're not happy with New York right now, then that's fine. But baseball is baseball, and the Yankees are one of my favorite teams. And let's see, Adriana writes in, and thank you for this amazing information. Of course, Jennifer is watching too, and Jackie. All right, so it's really great having you all here, but those are my main points about getting our kids back to school. I think it's very important. I was asked about that last week about a child. Where is it safe for them to go back to school in face of COVID-19 for what they actually might bring back to the parents, or in some cases the grandparents? And again, you talk to grandparents and say, are you comfortable with your grandchild going to school? Are you comfortable with people going to restaurants or bars? And I haven't heard yet a seasoned citizen, a senior citizen, say, I want you to close down the schools for me. I want you to wear your masks for me. I want you to protect me. The people who are 60 and above very rarely are going to even make that claim. In fact, that would be a good promo, I suppose. I shouldn't tell the pro-mask people what to do, but a good commercial would be older people saying, thank you for wearing your mask for me. Thank you for not shortening my days here on earth. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. And give us all a guilt complex. But in reality, people who are most susceptible to the disease are not asking the United States of America, every family, to shut down the economy, to shut down flying, to shut down cruise ships, to shut down the park down the street. They don't even go to the park down the street. So there's these issues here that, because I work with families from all over parts of this country and the world, you can see what people are in battle with right now. So you got to have to take that all too in consideration with whether you want to let your child go to school. I would say that everybody in the family should be taking their supplements right now to make them, as if you will, bulletproof. It's good for your immune system for whatever you're trying to optimize your immune system to fight against, whether it be coughs, colds, vomiting, diarrhea. But the point is, we still are going to get sick. There is not a perfect supplement regimen that's going to keep you or your child from contracting a viral infection. That's just what human beings do. We get sick and we make our immune system stronger. We get sick and this has been going on for time and eternity. Since human beings have been on planet Earth, we get sick. Okay, well, maybe after Adam and Eve, of course, but we get sick. And it's not something that you're trying to fight. You're not trying to fight from getting sick. What you're trying to do is you're trying to fight from getting so sick you pass away. Now that makes sense, right? But our kids are not in that group. Again, if you look at influenza, children's hospitals can fill up with influenza kids. I mean, kids with really sick from influenza. We're not seeing that with COVID-19. I'm just trying to dispel any kind of fear that we have about sending our kids off to school. They need the socialization. They need the structure. They need the stimulation. They need the therapies. How do you like the Zoom therapies, guys? Is that working for you? Putting these kids, especially special needs children, in front of a laptop computer and say, you've got 3 90-minute sessions today. You must sit here and watch your teacher. I don't know how you're doing it. I have a lot of very frustrated parents out there because that's what they're... Who in their right mind thought that they can do a Zoom class with a child with special needs? Hard enough with a neurotypical kid, but a child with special needs, to have them sit in front and work with a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, or the teacher who's trying to teach our kids what they need in their IEP. God love them for trying, but it's not, in my experience with my patient load, it's not been very successful. So if you're getting frustrated about that, you're in a very big boat. That's why I say our kids need 3-dimensional activities. They need to be touched. They need to be talked to. They need to have things in front of them. They need to be able to get up, walk around, process things maybe while moving around, because they're always processing. And moving around is very, very important for them. You can't do that when you're planted in front of a Zoom. All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, Jackie has joined us too. Hi, Jackie. So let's see, do we have any questions yet? Nope, we don't have any questions. So apparently you feel very comfortable with what we're talking about here. I'd love for you to email me this week at mendingnaturally@gmail.com and let me know your experiences as your kids are entering the school, what you're being asked to do with them, for those who are not homeschooling, but those who are actually going to a brick and mortar facility. Let me know what's going on and how it's doing. And David's here to show me something. What are you showing me?
There are questions.
There are questions. Good, because I was just about ready to sign off. He's bringing it up now. Oh, right. I see them. Okay. Let's start out here with Claudia. Hello, Claudia. Is doing great with the garlic drops. Love it. Garlic drops can be very, very helpful in helping the immune system fight infection. Okay, so I like to use a lot of garlic. The drops, though, are very pungent in flavor, and let's see if I have a little bottle of that here. I use the Alamax liquid drops, um, but if you open it up, it smells like you just walked into an Italian restaurant that's making lots and lots of delicious garlic bread. Kind of strong for some kids, but it is a natural antibiotic for the gut, and it's been very, very good. All right. And Claudia also says that online school doesn't work for my special needs. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that. It's like, who's thinking at school, administrator wife, thinking this was a great idea and I should get a raise? Let's do homeschooling. Let's do this distance learning with the Zoom. It's just not going to work. Okay. Um, Christy, hi Christy. She asks, I was wondering what natural yeast prevention as far as supplements. I'm aware of the importance of diet. And you have to also be aware of the importance of the child's immune system to fight yeast. Okay? Because yeast are a part of the human being. We have yeast everywhere. They're opportunistic organisms. They're under the arms, they're in skin folds, they're underneath the breasts, they're in our sinuses, they're in the back of our throat, they're on our feet. If they get a chance to grow on our feet, we call it athlete's foot. They can grow in the groin, and it could be vaginitis, or as men would refer to as jock itch. Um, they grow. And inside of our gut, they're there too. And what happens normally is the immune system keeps them under control. The immune system knows just about how many to allow to be there, and then the rest are just wiped out. So the immune system has to keep them under control. If you're getting yeast flares, it's not because you're failing, it's because the child's immune system just says, welcome guys, you're welcome here, you're our friends, come on in, live here. It's nice and warm and wet and dark and moist, and by the way, here comes some food. So that's the problem we're up against. So there are natural yeast medications that I have used in the past. Garlic, oregano are really good for combating yeast. MCT oil, medium chain triglyceride oils, that's coconut derived. Coconut also helps fight the yeast. Moving the bowels is very important too. Digestive enzymes might help the body absorb more of the nutrients in the small intestine, so by the time the material ends up in the colon, it's not so nutrient dense anymore because they love to eat. I've used preparations like Candex before, and they can be very helpful as well. But there's a lot of preparations out there that claim that they kill the yeast. I think before I went down a road to buy supplements to give the child because of yeast, I'd probably want a stool culture demonstrating that we have a yeast issue, because sometimes the behaviors you're seeing are not yeast derived. It's something else, even though they say, okay, all of that, they say online, oh, if we're doing this, it's yeast, because they know. But I don't know. I don't know if that's what's happening with your son or your daughter. So I like to get a stool study to see if we're barking up the right tree, or if we're totally, because then we're using these products and the kids' behaviors don't change. Is it because they lack the horsepower to kill the yeast, or yeast wasn't the problem in the first place? So that's a good question. Alrighty. Now, the importance of diet for yeast. Yeast love sugar, and they're equal opportunists. They love maple syrup, they love honey, they love strawberries, they love oranges, they love anything that's sweet. They love French fries, because remember, all starches, all carbohydrates are converted to sugar too. So even though you may have a low sugar diet, but the kid's eating a ton of rice or French fries, remember, in the digestive process, all starches are converted to sugar. So it's kind of difficult to put these kids on a no sugar diet. I try to put them on a low sugar diet, removing obvious sources of sweets, okay, because they do love their gluten-free Nutribars, and there's a lot of sugar in there. All of the gluten-free foods that are in the pastry form, if you will, like gluten-free brownies or whatever, they're very packed with sugar and carbohydrates that are converted to sugar to make them taste really yummy. and they do, but they're potent. So be careful with overdoing it with the starches. Our kids tend to be carbohydrate junkies. They love their carbs, right? And but don't we all, especially during stressful periods? I just had a family here, and they're vegetarians, but they're really pastaholics with a little bit of vegetables. Where a vegetarian, in my mind, the plate is full of vegetables with a little bit of pasta. A lot of people kind of get that backwards, and their plate is full of pasta with a little bit of vegetables. So that pasta, even though it's gluten free, it's all going to be converted to, you guessed it, sugar. Very good question. Alrighty. And let's see. I think, um, let's see. Annette writes, I feel as virus people. Oh, okay. She's just commenting in there. You guys can weird that. Um, my kid's preschool is asking for a letter to excuse the kids from wearing masks, even though the state mandate in Wisconsin states people with disabilities are exempt. I've seen that vary from private school to private school, and some schools will allow an exemption for a mask. Why you would take children, and I'll just say on the autism spectrum, and shut off their mouths and shut off the teachers' mouths from being visual. They're very, very difficult. Plus the muffled sound. Part of the face is engaging the babies, to kids, to children. The face is engaging. They've done studies on newborns that you can show them different things, but they have a predilection for the face. They want to see the face. And when you put something in front of the face, it becomes very less interesting, and you're not going to have their attention. It's just amazing how important this part of the face is in conveying mood, in conveying seriousness, sadness, happiness. They don't read the eyes. They can, but they don't. They need to see the whole face if they're even able to. Okay, because remember, for a group of kids on the autism spectrum, understanding facial expressions is very difficult for them. Okay. Alrighty, let's see. Lisa, do you have a question there? No, you guys are commenting, but hi, Lisa. And Carol, can you please talk about specific carbohydrate diet? Is that the best diet for kids with autism? Oh, okay. We'll switch gears here. This is kind of nice. You know what? There are a ton of diets out there. Let's face it. Okay, there is the specific carbohydrate diet. There's the paleo diet. Of course, everybody's heard about the ketogenic diet. Um, what I try and do is find the diet that works best for your son or daughter, and not worry about anybody else's son or daughter. It's what your child needs. Why should you go to bone broth or whatever diet's out there when your child isn't going to benefit from that? The specific carbohydrate diet, simply put, is asking the question, how does this child do without any grains? Okay, we're just not doing any grains. We're not doing rice. We're not doing potatoes. We're not doing gluten-free flours. We're not doing gluten flours. We're just doing grain-free. In other words, they're eating meats, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Real basic. Okay, there's a little more to it, but that's it. So you're asking with every diet, when you remove something, does the child do better? When I remove gluten, when I remove dairy, corn, citrus, soy, peanuts, the legumes, okay? The whole question is, when we do these removals, do we have improvement? So there's not the best diet out there. It's the best diet for your child. So you'd say, well, we've gone gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, corn-free, and we're still kind of stimmy. And I'd say, okay, so how are our bowel movements? Oh, they're fine. How's our sleeping? We're good. How does the tummy look? It's bloated. It's big. It's flat. It's perfect. I mean, these are questions that I'd ask, and then I'd say, okay, no matter what I do, I've got a bloated tummy. Lots of gas, loose stools, whatever. Then I might think about a fruit-free diet. And I just was talking about that with a family today, a fruit-free diet. Huh? You've heard of people who are lactose intolerant. They're intolerant of lactose. That's the sugar of milk, lactose. And we need an enzyme called lactase to break down the lactose. Well, I have kids on the spectrum who are fructose intolerant, and they needed fructase. Well, how do I make that determination? Well, just kind of like what you're saying, I remove all fruit and see how their tummies do. How's the gas production do? What happens with the stool? Just for a week. That's no fruit juices, okay, or fruit of any kind for a week, maybe two, to see how they do. So you might be going to all these other diets when fruit is the problem, okay, or rice is the problem, or so we have to have something to work with. Very often, a nutritionist, a dietitian who is accustomed to working with kids on the spectrum can help you pilot through this and figure it out so you're just not throwing darts at a dartboard and says, oh, we're on a ketogenic diet this week, and then you do that, and that didn't work, so you throw another dart and say, oh, we're on a specific carbohydrate diet this week, and that's not working, and you throw another dart. It's better when you're going to start making some big dietary changes, you get some guidance. Okay. Annette, hello Annette. Have you heard of a study of Research Institute in California using glutathione in a research study to recover the kids on the spectrum? Holy cow. We've been using glutathione since 2000. Dr. Bradstreet and I were injecting glutathione after we saw a video by Dr. Perlmutter about Parkinson's disease using IV glutathione. You're not going to recover a child with IV glutathione, but you might make them a lot better. You might make them better with oral glutathione, or you may grow yeast because yeast love oral glutathione. And then there's transdermal. Well, the whole idea is, well, where's this glutathione coming from? Well, you want to use B12, right? We've talked about using B12 and folate and vitamin B6. And we can actually get the body to make glutathione, and I think that's better. But then you get into those kids who have the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase problems genetically. They don't make enough, and that's the MTHFR, and how do we support that and everything. But you're not going to recover a child with glutathione. That said, can kids get a whole lot better with glutathione? Yeah. But IV glutathione, from the last time I looked, lasts about 4 to 6 hours in the body, and then it's gone. So you're not going to be giving them IVs every 4 to 6 hours. They're very expensive. And 9 out of 10 kids prefer not to have an IV. So I like the idea of glutathione and IV, but I also like the idea of either using glutathione as a supplement, or using components of supplements to help your body make the best glutathione ever in every cell. Okay, but you're absolutely right. Glutathione has been proven to be very helpful, but don't go down the road like it's going to cure my kid if I can just get IV glutathione. And I've given IV glutathione and did absolutely nothing, because that's not the kid's problem. All right. Emily asks, hi Emily. Thought on using probiotics to help a child on the autism spectrum. Okay. Everybody's got a probiotic out there, and everybody waves their hand. Theirs is the best, and the rest are worse. This is why ours is the best. We have these strains, and this, and this, and this. Okay. First of all, the organisms growing in the gut is like a tropical rainforest. There are things in there we haven't even discovered yet. Okay. There are bacteria that we didn't even know grow in there. It's a very diverse microbiome. It's its own jungle. It's got its own stuff going on. And there are 1 trillion cells in there. That's a lot. So the idea of giving them 1 billion of this or 1 billion of that, but everybody's got the best one for your child. And again, I'm going to say, how do you know? So we can look at the data on probiotics, and they're actually very good and very strong. I've been using probiotics for over 20 years. And right now, I think like last 3 or 4 years ago, the American Academy of Pediatrics has actually chimed in and said, oh, they need probiotics. What I tend to do is when I do a stool study, I measure the healthy bacteria that are growing in a child and see what's missing, and then I try to select a probiotic that fills in those gaps. Because, like for example, if you were to say, well, Culturelle does such and such, Well, culturelle is Lactobacillus GG. The strain is called GG. Last time I looked, Kirkman Labs uses a lactobacillus that the strain is Chris Hansen strain. Okay, so they have different strains, and of course everybody says their strain is the best for your baby. But generally, I think a good probiotic that is not made in China, that is made by a very reputable company that's um, is the right way to go. More is not necessarily better for these kids. I've had kids come totally unglued with probiotics. You wonder, how can a probiotic change the emotional affect of a child? I've seen disasters with probiotics, even the ones that I use here in my office that I know are good. And the baby's basically just telling you, don't mess with my body, my GI, at least with probiotics, because you're going to get burned. Sometimes the prebiotics that help the probiotics grow are a problem, okay? And sometimes the prebiotics are a godsend. Man, you add the prebiotic with the probiotic, and the kid's doing great, normal stools, and the belly's soft, and no more gas, and sleeping good, and no more cramping. So I think, yes, most of the kids that I take care of are on a probiotic. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, especially if they're on an antibiotic, okay, or been on a lot of antibiotics. I've had kids who've had been 20, 30 rounds of antibiotics before they see me. So I do like probiotics, but stick with a company that really does a bang up job on bringing all of their products line that are clean and been third party tested, and don't go for the one that says, oh, but we've got 20 billion and this other one only has 10 billion. Sometimes only 3 billion does it, and sometimes we use 100 billion. So just be careful with them. Alrighty. Dastin, hi Dastin. Can neurotypical children get severe yeast infections and so show some repetitive behaviors? Absolutely, absolutely. Especially if you have a neurotypical child who's eating a neurotypical U.S. diet, with Pop-Tarts and donuts and the breakfasts of most children in the United States is very carbohydrate rich and sugary. Okay, that's before we get to chocolate milk. That's before we even get to Lucky Charms cereals or Fruit Loops or whatever. So we can induce in people a yeast infection in the gut. And the best way to diagnose that is with a stool study, so you're not chasing your tail. And if the study shows that they got yeast, then you go ahead and you treat it. I'm kind of aggressive here in my clinic treating yeast infections because of the fact that when I use natural things, I tend to use those to keep yeast from coming back. But if I've got a well-established colony living in a kid, I want something with a lot of horsepower to get the job done, to see if these behaviors that the child's exhibiting are yeast related or not, because I'm not worried about whether the MCT oil had the horsepower to get rid of what I'm trying to get rid of. So that's a good question. So yes, we can. It tends to be rare, but neurotypical children can have various degrees where their immune system doesn't work appropriately, and if we're not doing the right surveillance for yeast in our gut, the immune system does that, then things can certainly grow. Okay. Could it be SIBO with gas? How would one test? Very difficult test for our kids. Yeah, it's a breath test. Okay, and I may have gotten 2 successful breath tests with SIBO on high functioning kids on the spectrum. I take a history and I get an x-ray, and if the kid's got a long history of being constipated, then I know the small intestines are probably been polluted with bacteria, and SIBO, of course, is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And we don't want to have bacterial overgrowing in the small intestine. How do they grow? It probably got pushed up there from constipation, but we don't really know, but that's what I'm suspecting because most of my SIBO kids are constipated kids. So we can treat that, again, with an antibiotic called Xifaxan, maybe a 25%, 30% chance that your insurance will pay for it. And then we can also use metronidazole, not as good. Alinea, not as good. But there are ways that we can look at. But the number one way to help get on the right track is to make sure they're emptying their bowels well every day, twice a day. Okay. All righty. Beth. Hi, Beth. Hi, Dr. Jerry. I'm all for getting back into school and back to normal. Aren't we all? My wife keeps waking up every day. It's still here. Um, but looking at the requirements for my daughter with school starting back this week, it is so far from normal experience. I'm wondering if it's worth it in person right now. Let me see. It says see more. See if you wrote more there. Oh, more there. Okay. Um, Wearing a mask all day. Temperature taken. Social distancing. Following direction arrows. No recess. No eating lunch in their rooms. Wondering if it'd all be worth it. Knowing what I know about your little one, your big one now, I don't think so. Okay, I mean that's a disaster, and I think what would happen, what I think is happening, with, especially in this school district and all, is that they're going to bring them back in, and then the first COVID case, they're going to shut it all down. So you get her going, you get her acclimated to all of this stuff and the arrows and everything. Who thought of that, right? And then they just shut it down again. So in your particular case, I'm kind of like with you on that one. Let's stay home and let some of this craziness pass. That's pretty stringent. So that would be, if that was my baby doll going to school, I'd say no, we're not going to do that. We're not playing that game. I wouldn't even go. Okay, I mean, if say I'm going to school and they're telling me I have to do this and the temperature check and I've got to wear my mask all day, you guys, if you wore a mask all day, that's crazy hard. It really is. It's anxiety producing. You're hot. You're rebreathing your own air. It's like, who can do that? And I'm a doctor. I've done 4-hour, 5-hour, 6-hour surgeries, but I wouldn't wear it all day. I can't. It just doesn't work with my psyche. So I'd say no. So I'm probably just echoing what you kind of knew in your heart. This is not a good setup. Okay. And Annette, thank you, saying the Mending Naturally probiotics are awesome. We do select the right makers, the right pedigrees, and the right products, the right particular distribution of probiotics in our Mending Naturally probiotics to maximize their potential for help and minimize the side effects that we can get from them. And I don't only have my own company, but I sell a couple of others, and I feel very confident that they do a really good job. The product's clean, it's hypoallergenic, and what they say is in there is in there. And Carolina says hi. Hi right back to you. And you know what? Let me just do a quick refresh and see if that is all the questions for today. And if it is, we will sign off. And here it comes. And I think, go up to the top here. And I think that is, oh, okay. Carol says, I hope I'm saying that right. My son gets lots of gas with probiotics. Is that okay? No, I got the wrong probiotic. When I think of a lot of gas, I think of fermenting organisms. And and I've talked about this before, it's kind of gross, but our bottoms are our exhaust pipe to our metabolic engine, an exhaust pipe, okay? And what comes out of our exhaust pipe lets us know what's going on. So for example, a car that's backfiring gas, you know something's wrong with that internal combustion engine. And cars should not be backfiring. Cars should not be choking out black smoke, blue smoke, or white smoke. If there is, there's something wrong with that engine. So when our kids give me, I had one today, chocolate mousse looking poop, okay, I mean really airy and frothy and kind of weird, guys, or we've got lots of gas, or we've got bloating, then when I look at giving kids probiotics or whatever I'm doing, I'm looking to make them better, not worser. So if we're turning your child into a gas-producing monster, then I would stop that one and find something different. I'd look and see what's on that bottle, and when I pick a different one, I'd make sure whatever I've got here isn't in that one. Okay, good question. All right, we are done for the day. Great questions. Oh my gosh, look at the time. I'm going to sign off for now, and again, email us at mendingnaturally at gmail.com, mendingnaturally at gmail.com this week. Let us know about your school experiences, and we'll share those next week, okay? I'm really interested in seeing what's going on out there, and how I might be able to help with that. We're going to have problems with anxiety. We are going to get colds. We're going to have these rules, and I think the kids are going to have a real problem with the rules and not having recess, and they can't eat here and stuff. So, interested to hear what's going on in your lives. Have a great week. Focus on some really cool, neat stuff, and don't dwell on all the negative stuff out there, because it's just really thick right now for all of us. And have a great week, and I look forward to being with each of you next week. Take care, and thanks for joining us. Bye bye now.